Hello, good morning, and welcome to Here Today.
Where tomorrow.
And today, we are finally back in Florida.
As we wrap up this first season for our Northeast road trip, we wanted to take some time to reflect on the incredible journey that we had and some of the things that we loved, some of the things we didn't love, and some of the things we learned along the way. The first thing that we loved about this trip was all of the different places that we got to stop along the way. We absolutely loved our time in Maine and New Hampshire.
The New England states are definitely a place that we really enjoyed. Something we did discover this year in our first season was the Yogi Bear Jellystone parks. Those, if you're a family and you got kids or even big kids that just want to do some fun exploring activities, Jellystone is the way to go. Now, they're a little bit on the pricier side of things because it is chock full of amenities, but for us and for Madison, it was definitely worth the increase in price.
We also really loved that there's differences between the parks too. No two Jellystones are the same, but all of them have all of the amenities that you would expect and more. Some of them had carousels, train rides, you name it. So it was really great to learn that that is what works for us, and we have a lot more in store coming up this next season.
So I would probably say our favorite spot that we were at was the Jellystone in New Hampshire.
That was the one. We were right on the lakefront property, and it was gorgeous. We did a paddle boat. They had the big jumping pillow, wonderful playground.
I got to fly the drone.
Yes.
It was really, and our spot was the last spot in the row. So our campsite was also looking at the beach, which at this time it was a little bit cooler because it was in the fall. So there wasn't a lot of people on the beach. So we really had a massive campsite all to ourselves, and being right on the water was absolutely beautiful.
We also did a really wonderful fire there too. Their fire pit was gorgeous, and everything about it we absolutely loved. So that was definitely our number one campsite of this year.
Now the second thing we really loved, and this will be a shock to you, is the food.
It's no shock.
It's no shock. No surprises here.
We really enjoyed the different variations of dishes depending on what region you're in.
Yeah.
Great example is
The lobster rolls. My God. Great minds and great bellies think alike. So it was interesting, and we didn't know this because maybe we're just ignorant, maybe everyone knows this. We did not know that there were variations on a lobster roll. We thought a lobster roll was a lobster roll was a lobster roll. So our first experience with lobster rolls was at LL Bean's sister's mother's wife's second cousin twice removed sister store, L Bean's Main Kitchen, which is across the street from LL Bean's main headquarters in Freeport, Maine.
Which, fun fact, is open 24/7, 365.
Yeah, they never close. Never, ever close.
Not for a holiday.
Yeah.
Not overnight.
Yeah.
You can literally get all of their adventure gear 24/7.
Fashion doesn't sleep. Anyways, so we went to Linda Bean's Main Kitchen and ordered a lobster roll. And to my surprise, and really our surprise, it came out cold.
Which we've never had one.
Right. Silly us. And they don't list it. They don't say, let's have a cold lobster roll. They just said a traditional Maine lobster roll. I'll have a traditional Maine lobster roll. And it was a cold lobster, like a tuna salad or something like that. And that was really interesting to us.
It was good.
It was very good. But to me, I thought it would be warm. So I do some research, and it turns out that's the Connecticut style lobster roll, which we did a whole comparison between a Maine lobster roll, Connecticut lobster roll. Personally, for me, and you've never had a Connecticut lobster roll because you were working and had to miss out on such an experience, but a Connecticut style lobster roll is 100% the way to go.
And I mean, I did not have it, but I could only imagine that would be my preference.
So the next time we're in the New England states, because we will definitely be back to that whole area, we're definitely going to have to do another comparison so that you get to try the difference between a Maine and a Connecticut style lobster roll.
But definitely, that's why our number two thing we loved about this trip was trying the local delicacies and all of the delicious food.
Like a Nick Tahoe garbage plate? Wow, that was
something.
That was something. That was a whole Rochester, New York thing. I'll go ahead and I'll link that up here. But it was very interesting. I'm not sure that I
won't get it again.
Yeah. It was good. Like, it was a good selection of food. I just don't know if I love that amount of food all touching each other.
But either way, we really enjoyed trying all of the different types of food all along the way.
We did.
The final thing that we loved about our first season camping in the Northeast is all of the people that we met and got to spend time with.
Some of those people were brand new friends that we met in a campground or out and about exploring the town. And some of it was just catching up with family we haven't seen in many, many, many years, or family that they've never even met.
Madison got to meet a lot of her family that she's never had the opportunity to meet before because of the pandemic. And that was really special and a lot of what drove when we wanted to be in New York so we could make it to the reunion.
So now we're going to go into a couple of things that we learned on this, our first season of RVing. One is that travel looks different for everyone. And for us, something that we had to learn was that traveling during the weekdays, it's not for us.
We found it very stressful to travel during the work week and having no real solid connection or just comfort that we're going to be able to get work done. We had a really hard time with, as we're traveling, losing connection entirely. And you don't know how long you're not going to have signal, and it just becomes a very stressful pace of life. It also adds in an additional layer of concerns with timing, which can already be challenging enough depending on when check-in and check-out times are for your different campsites. So it just made it really challenging and added a layer of stress that we learned is not for us.
So another thing that we learned is that the world is a lot smaller than you think. It may seem like the country is very big, and it is. It covers, thousands of miles. However, if you take those miles and you break them down to 200 or 300 mile trips, it really doesn't take that long to get anywhere.
We made it to New York from Florida in 3 weeks.
And that was taking our sweet time. I mean, we spent forever with my parents just to, kind of hang out a little bit. I think that I was intimidated with this rig behind us. Such a big rig crossing the country, just going up, never doing this before. I've never towed anything this big. And we've never done a trip like this. And so I was intimidated, but I'm here to tell you that it's really not as intimidating as you may think. So for those that are thinking about dipping their toes into full-time RVing or even part-time and just taking really big trips, know that it is easily managed. It really is. Once you start breaking things up into smaller chunks and you realize what works and what doesn't work for you, as we found out over this past first season, it really does become quite manageable. And so as we look towards our next season and going out west, we really do not feel the stress or the impact that we did when we were originally planning this first season.
Also, shout out to the tools that made that possible. Number one tool that we use is our RV GPS, and that is worth every penny for the investment.
And that is the Garmin 890. It is the RV specific GPS. And that really did save us quite a lot of time and stress trying to figure out if we can go to certain areas, because it takes into account height, width, weight, length. There are some states that it is actually illegal to go through a tunnel with propane tanks. The RV GPS takes all that stuff into account and tells us accordingly whether we should do this and gives us options and leaves it up to us ultimately, but has some definite benefits.
The other thing that we watch a lot when we are planning our routes is elevation. And we take that into consideration when we're planning how long a day can be. So that's another big area that the RV GPS helps us with, is it will actually route out and tell you the elevation throughout your route. Yep. I touched on connection a little bit when we were trying to figure out what works for us for travel. The other big thing that we learned this season is hotspots are just not enough. We left Florida only having 2 separate carriers hotspots, T-Mobile, AT&T. And we were really thinking that, between A or B, we should be able to be connected. We learned quickly that is not the case. We invested in Starlink, and it has been a game changer.
Absolutely. I think that if you plan to do this life full-time, Starlink is the way to go as of right now. It's pricey, but we have had very little issues with this. FMCA, which is the Family Motor Coach Association, had a grandfathered deal with T-Mobile on hotspots, unlimited hotspot. It was a very, very good price. Well, that deal has changed and since gone away, and now they switched over to AT&T. It's throttled, and it is nowhere near as good. And so we lost that hotspot connectivity, and I don't miss it because Starlink has well exceeded what we were getting with that hotspot.
We originally were going to keep both just in case there's, some reason that the satellite wasn't going to be able to reach. But we learned quickly it's not even worth holding on to because Starlink has been so reliable and really, really, really powerful.
Now, we do have T-Mobile hotspots on our phones with our T-Mobile account. However, we rarely ever use that. It's only if we're trying to do something on a weekend as we're rolling through town on the road if we ever actually need anything, but rarely do we ever use those. It's Starlink all the way. Elon Musk, I know people hate him, but
we love him.
He's got a product that we adore. So Elon Musk, thanks.
When we were trying to decide if this lifestyle was for us, it was before Starlink was actually readily available. And we kept putting so much emphasis on Starlink. Someday Starlink will come through, and we're so happy it did. Now it's time we get to things that we didn't like about this first season.
Wah, wah.
First thing that we did not like is how stressful the travel days can be.
Yes, they can be very stressful. That depends on you and how you set things up. Now, we spent a lot of time perfecting our travel days and getting them down to almost a checklist of things to do. Now, there are some things that are outside of your control, mainly the weather. But in all of our travels, we really only had one day where we had to set up in some terrible weather. And that really wasn't that bad.
That was pretty good.
How much we moved.
Yes. Another thing that we do to manage the stress on travel days is to stick to the rule of threes. No more than 300 miles in a day, no more than 3 hours on the road, and arrive at your destination before 3 p.m.
And that arrive before 3 p.m. is super crucial. There is nothing worse than showing up after dark to a place you've never been before. So going back to the elevation thing, you can have a 250-mile trip that takes 4 hours because of elevation changes. So you do have to really pay attention to that 300 miles or 3 hours because it's, especially as you go through. Now, as we're going out west and we're gonna be tackling some serious mountain pass roads, we are super gonna pay attention to that. But even just in the Northeast, going through the Appalachian Mountains, things like that, it was important that we pay attention to a lot of those things.
Our very first RV trip in our first camper, which was called Pio, our small travel trailer. Pio. We ended up having to go on a Friday after I got off of work, and we arrived to our destination as the sun was setting. And we, for the first time camping, never wanted to do that again. So that was where we really learned and have stuck to prior to 3 p.m. We will never arrive anywhere in the dark. If we can't get there in the dark, we'll find somewhere else.
And I know a lot of people don't find that as intimidating. And again, you have to figure out what works for you. But having a toddler with us that has a specific bedtime, us leaving super late, getting there really late, it really throws off the groove for Madison and for us. So we really, at least in this season of our lives, we really want to pay attention to those things. So another thing we want to talk about is booking your campsites way ahead of time. Now, this is kind of things we learned, but also one thing we didn't like was we really felt the need to book things out way in advance. And we really did have everything booked out months in advance. And then we had some stuff come up and we had to change all of those plans. And there's two schools of thought. One is it's really not that hard to find campgrounds that are open, as long as you're not in the busy season or in a place that everyone goes, Florida, somewhere Southwest for the winter. However, because Katie had some things pop up with work, we had booked places that were nowhere near an airport. And that really made a lot of inconvenient drives. And as you saw, right around West Virginia, we started pushing things all over the place, and it became quite a mess, a stressful mess, to make sure that we had places to stay that were closer to airports. But because we had to move this forward, we had to keep this one longer, and then that cut time in other states, so we had less time, and it was quite a mess, and that was something we did not like.
We did not like it at all. We also lost money on deposits that we made on those sites. And so something that is to be considered is you have to find a happy medium. Yes, you want to book early enough, especially if it's a place that's critical to have a good spot in. Wintering. We've already booked winter this year, which is going to be in Arizona, but that was the very first thing we booked because we knew that is something that you need to do early.
Yeah, things like that, like Florida, Arizona, those places book up pretty quickly. So if you have a spot that you're in the mind for, that you want to spend the winter at, so we're talking a couple of months, you need to book that ahead of time, because maybe you could find a week here, a week there, but if you want one spot for 3 months, you better book it early.
But outside of that, we have to embrace the flexible lifestyle that RVing gives us, and be okay with having some of those changes occur, and know that there's that happy balance. It's great to have a plan, it's great to book early, but know that there's options. That brings us to the last thing that we did not like about this season.
And this is a minor, but really did irk us.
We got really upset when we are paying to stay at resorts and really nice RV parks, and the sites were unlevel, not concrete, and took us an hour to level out or longer.
There was one spot, I won't name the campground because it was a beautiful campground, but honestly, you'd have thought it was our first time touching an RV, because it took us so long to find a spot that was level enough where we weren't maxing out stroking on one side, we weren't lifting tires off of another. I mean, we were on leveling blocks. We were literally, we had to hook up and unhook twice. So we moved at least 5 times. Forward, no, back, no, forward. Okay, this should be good. Unhook, auto level. The wheels are in the sky. It was, my God.
And it was after a really long travel day, which just made it that much worse.
One of the things, and this is really anecdotal for us, we were working on Madison riding a bike, learning how to ride a bike. And that was here before we left in July of 22. She was doing really well. And then we went out on this Northeast adventure, and rarely ever did we have a place that had enough concrete for us to pull the bike out.
Now again, we understand we choose where we stay.
Correct.
So, I'm sure we could find it, but it was just very surprising how uncommon it was.
Yeah, and so there was so many places where Madison would say, I want to ride my bike. There's nowhere for you to ride your bike, hon. There would be a basketball court you could do circles in. That's it. Everything else was huge rock, so not manageable with a tiny bike with training wheels, and it just wasn't great. And so I kind of felt guilty. So we've really tried to make it a point here back in Florida to get on these fully paved streets and get her out on her bike. And I think that's something that we also learned, was that we need to pay a little bit more attention to what the RV park or the resort or wherever it is really does look like. And if it has the amenities like a playground or a heated pool or concrete, But
we weren't looking for that in our first season, and now we know that we need to be paying more attention.
So those were minuscule dislikes, but I really do feel like we had a great experience, and we'll talk about the whole thing in a little bit, but I don't feel like there was really many things that made this first 5-6 months on the road unenjoyable. I would say all in all, it was a really great experience, and I would definitely do it again. In fact, we're going out west. Mm-hmm. So aside from the camping, you guys know that we love cruising as well, and we have a couple of cruises. Some we've already taken that you've seen, like the Norwegian Breakaway that I was on the Vlogger Extravaganza. That was an amazing, amazing cruise. We also have the MSC Meraviglia, which was our first time on MSC. That's going to be coming out right after this video comes out.
And then after that, we jump onto the Carnival Celebration flagship, and it's our first big cruise, which was really, really fun. So while we're in Florida, we're gonna be cruising and really preparing for this next season, which we're really excited to share that we have decided to sell our lot in Cedar Key.
Yeah, so we bought this lot knowing that we were gonna need a place to come back to for a couple of times. Now, when we sold the house with the intention of just staying put, living in the trailer, and just experiencing what is it like to live in such a small space with a small family. And we did that in this spot.
We really needed to make sure we had a place that we could be comfortable, we know we could come back to, and we didn't have any questions asked. And we were trying to reduce as much stress as possible during this lifestyle change. And so it was perfect for what we needed when we needed it, but we have found that this lifestyle is something that we want to embrace and continue. And so we're going to go ahead and let go of this lot, and we're going to head out west.
That's right. So we are going to be heading out to Arizona, but we got a lot of the US to see before we get there. So we will be leaving here in about second week of May, and we aim to be in Arizona at the beginning of December. Now our plan is to kind of mosey on straight west, spend a couple weeks here and there. We definitely want to spend a lot of quality time in Colorado, which I've been there before. I went skiing there with my family. It is an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous state. So we're definitely going to be spending a lot of time in Colorado, but there's a lot of states in between here and there that we want to hit. We got a lot of friends that we want to see. Some of our friends like Patrick and Becca from P&B's Wide World of Ports. You guys met them on the Vlogger Extravaganza. Katie and Madison haven't met them yet, but Madison and their daughter Holly have FaceTimed quite a few times, and they are super excited. So we're gonna meet up with them in Arkansas. So we're staying at a campground that is located at an active quartz mine where we get to go dig up quartz ourselves. So that's gonna be super fun. Then we're gonna follow them back up to Missouri from where they're from. We got a lot of things planned with them. There's gonna be a lot of people that you guys are gonna meet. Some are new, some are gonna be old friends that you may have seen in previous videos. I know that my family's talking about maybe meeting us up out west. Her family's gonna meet us up in Christmas of this year out west. So we have so many things planned. So I would invite you, if you're into camping, cruising, or just general family fun and travel, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help the channel out, and then you'll be kept up to date anytime that we upload a video. So hit that bell and definitely hit the subscribe. Like, comment. We love answering your guys' questions, comments, concerns. You just let us know.
The other thing that we'd love is if you would comment, if there's anything that you're like, yes, we've done this and it is a must do anywhere in the US, we want to hear from you. We need
from Tornado Alley West.
Yes.
We need plans.
We don't
so
have
please share them below.
a lot yet planned, and like we said, we're learning the balance of how to plan all of this. Our point is anything in between A and B.
Yeah, we got a lot of states to cover. Between camping and cruising last year, we went to 18 states and 6 countries, and we'd love to expand that number this year in 2023 and 2024. So soon enough, we will be going international. We cannot wait to do some international travel as well, but we're gonna sprinkle all that in with camping and cruising and everything that we can in between.
So join us along the way.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Katie.
From Here Today.
Where Tomorrow.
And we'll see you
there.